Okay, replacing an operating system drive. Now, perhaps you're upgrading from a HDD hard disk drive, or maybe you're replacing a low capacity solid disk drive. Swapping an existing computer drive that contains the operating system is not difficult when using the Samsung Magician software. Here's the dilemma I was faced with Carol's desktop. Our main computer is an HP desktop running Windows 10 with 16 gig of RAM and an Intel i7 7th generation processor. The bad news is this computer cannot be upgraded to Windows 11, which requires an 8th generation or newer processor, one generation off. So as Windows 10 will continue to receive upgrades for the next 2 years, the plan was easy. We were going to wait until then to replace this computer. Now, just also to make this mention, several years ago, computer manufacturers felt it would improve system performance if the operating system and program files were stored on a different drive than the user's documents and other data files. So most of us grew up having just one drive C that had everything, and now this has resulted in modern computers having a drive C and a drive D, as does Carol's. So while drive C on Carol's desktop was an SSD, surprisingly, its capacity was only 128 gigabytes. And with the type of high-end programs she uses, it recently became clear that a larger capacity drive was necessary. Additionally, for reasons I still cannot explain, this drive began to accumulate on its own additional miscellaneous program files, for example, font files, that fill the drive to its capacity. So that's where Samsung Magician software comes in. The decision was made to replace the C drive, and the choice was a 2 terabyte Samsung 870 EVO solid-state drive, which was purchased on Prime Day at a discounted price of about $100. The main reason for a Samsung drive was so we could use the Samsung Magician software for the data migration from the old drive to the new one. I've used this software in the past on both a desktop and a 12-year-old laptop without any issues. So while this software is a free download, it only works with Samsung drives. So step one, I needed to connect the new solid-state drive to the computer. So I did this by using a USB 3.0 to solid-state drive adapter. That's a picture of what they look like, with one end connected to the solid-state drive and the other to a USB-A connection on the desktop. Then came step two. I went to the Samsung website and I downloaded the latest version 8 Magician software. You have the choice for either Windows or Mac operating systems, as well as Android. Now, when the download was completed, I followed the instructions to then install the program, and then once it was installed, I started the program. So step three, the data migration. So the Samsung data migration window appears where I confirm the source drive was the old solid state and the target drive was the new Samsung. Each disk showed as drive C, which is what I wanted. Now we come to cloning the old drive to the new drive. The cloning process took less than 20 minutes, and when completed, I shut down the computer. I then took out the old solid-state drive and in its place plugged in the new one. So the end results were the computer booted up from the new solid-state drive, showing 2 terabytes of storage capacity. That's a 67% increase from that old drive. And the added benefit was this mystery of files being added to the C drive stopped. So I think there was something wrong with that original solid-state drive that came with the computer. Now, Samsung provides what's known as benchmark information results. So the new drive on the computer can provide visual indicators of the drive health, the temperature, and how much of the volume or storage capacity is being used. And you can see here in this photo from the benchmark that it gives information regarding sequential read and write and random read and write, Well, let's see if we can explain what those are. So sequential read and write speeds. I'm going to mention that the information on the next two slides has been provided by Bing Chat. A sequential read speed is the speed at which data is read from a storage device in a continuous manner. It is measured in megabytes per second. Now, the ideal sequential read speed depends on the intended use of the storage device. Now, for most users, a minimum sequential read speed of 500 megabytes per second is considered good for everyday tasks, such as web browsing, document editing, and media playback. However, if you're trying to pick the right drive to upgrade your laptop or build a new PC, then the recommendation is a solid-state drive with at least 500 megabytes sequential read and write speed. That is both for the read speed and the write speed. This will comfortably be fast for most tasks. The benchmark on that previous slide showed that the Samsung had a sequential read speed of 560 and a sequential write speed of 516, so surpassing that recommendation. Now, the random read and write speed is even a little bit different here. This measures how fast a storage device can access small chunks of data that are scattered across the drive. This is important for tasks that involve many smaller files, such as booting up or launching applications. Now, the random write speed is measured in input, output, operations per second. That's IOPS. The higher the IOPS, the faster the storage device can access small files. Now, here's an interesting statistic. A typical hard disk drive, the old-fashioned ones we were so used to, has a random read speed of around 0.5 to 1.5 IOPS and a random write speed of around 1 to 2 IOPS. In contrast, solid-state drives have a random speed of 10,000 to 100,000 IOPS and a random write speed of 30,000 to 100,000. Incredible difference. That's why solid-state drives are so much more efficient and faster than the old-fashioned hard disk drives. So the benchmark showed that the Samsung had 74,218 random read and 58,593 for random write. Again, well within the range that we would want. So Carol's computer is now back in business. And I always say, happy wife, happy life. So thank you very much.
Take it away.
Thanks, Hewie. Yeah, my favorite topic is travel photos. In case you don't know, I'm Chris Guld. This is my husband, Jim. We are Geeks on Tour, and I am a Google Photos product expert by Google. And the pictures I'm going to be showing you is where Google flew me over to London for a conference. So, I asked to do this live rather than record a video because I want some audience participation from you. In a minute, I am going to post a link into the chat, and I want everybody to click that link and experience what it's like to go along for the ride with somebody who is traveling. So organize and share your travel photos. I'm going to be using Google Photos and the Albums feature. Now, you can do similar things with Apple's iCloud Photos, with Amazon Photos, with OneDrive. I do think Google Photos has just the slickest and easiest way of managing them. And probably my number one point is don't be like the people that say, oh, I took so many pictures on my vacation, it's going to take me a week to organize them all when I get back. No, do it as you go. You can do it right on your phone, or if you brought a laptop, you can do that. Create an album on day one. Share a link to that album with all your friends and family. Then they are seeing it and commenting on it. Trust me, it makes you more aware of posting photos when you're getting the comments from your friends and family. They get notified when you add more pictures, and they can like and comment. So if you follow that, by the time you get home, you're all done. All your travel photos are in an album, and you've already shared it with everybody. So I'm going to do that. So you have to pretend to go back to October 14 with me. So on October 14, we got on a plane to go to London. I want to start an album right away. I like to have a picture of us on the plane. And so there we are. You just click the three dots and add to album. Now this is on the computer. I'll be doing some of this. I'll go back and forth between computer and phone, but computer, and I'm going to say new album. And just to distinguish this from all the other ones I've done, I'm going to call it TFS, Tech for Senior Geeks in London. Now, here's one thing that's brand new with Google Photos albums, and I don't use it yet, so I'm just going to click on remove for these highlights. So it's TFS Geeks in London and click the check mark. Now I want to go add another picture. So I'll go back and I will look at, I love taking pictures of these maps that are in the back of the seat on the airplane, and I take a bunch of them. I am not going to add all of those. Be selective. Choose your best to add to the album. So I click the three dots, add to album, and TFS Geeks in London. So now I have an album with 2 pictures. I'm going to share it right now. I'm not going to wait. So I click on the TFS. I click the share button, which is up in the upper right. And you share with a link. So create link and create link and copy. Now I'm going to paste that just into our Zoom chat. And I want everybody to click on it. Why can't I find the chat?
Oh.
Summary. I'm looking for the chat. There, I found it. All right, so I'm pasting the link to everybody. And I would like everybody to click on that link. Now, if you do not use Google, then you will still be able to see the photos. If you do use Google, you will see another button called Join. If you click Join, then that means when I add more photos, you will be notified. It also means you'll be able to add comments. So everybody, please click on that link. And I can see already that people have joined. I can look at my album, and up here at the top, I see the people who have joined. I click the little 3 dots, and I can see all the names of the people who have joined. Way cool. When you're traveling, I can't express, it's just really nice to know that there are people following along with you. All right, so now I'm going to go to the phone and I'm going to add a few more pictures. So as I say, it doesn't matter whether you're on a computer or the phone, everything is still there. You will need an internet connection at least once in a while. You can do this without an internet connection, but it doesn't get sent until you do. So I'm going to go to October 15 now. And this is when we arrived in London, and Google was there with people ready to drive us to the hotel. So I add that. And those of you who have joined should be getting a notification that I just added. And I can go to October. Oh, here's one. A lot of you know Michael Daniels, so I'm going to add his picture to that album. I can also add multiple. I'm on October 15 now, and that was the first party. In the evening, there was the first party. And I want to add that picture. I'll select it. And that video and that picture. and that picture. So I have selected 4. I can now tap the plus, add to TFS Geeks in London. So all 4 get added. Now, if I go look at the album on my phone here, I'm looking at albums under library, and TFS Geeks in London. And has anybody written a comment? I can see by this little button here, this means show me any comments or activities. And there's a comment. Richard, yes. It's like actually being there when someone is traveling. Yes, I know that Richard did follow us while we were there and left comments, so I knew he was watching and with us. It's such a nice feeling. And as I say, because of that, you tend to add pictures more often. Say, oh, so-and-so would love to see this. So you add it. And by the time you're home, you have organized your travel pictures. Then when you're home, let me go back to the computer.
Okay. You're doing.
And so now I want to show you. Oh, and on the phone, you saw when I clicked on comments, it changed the whole screen. On the phone, you're either looking at your album or you're looking at comments. On the computer, you can see the comments in the activity over on the right-hand side, while you see the album on the left-hand side. Now I want to take you back to the real album that I did make, because it has 250. It has 250 some odd pictures in it. Well, we were gone for 6 weeks all total. And I believe in not adding more than 6 or 7 pictures per day, but I do add that. So here is our entire 6 weeks trip, and it's all done because I was doing it as we go. I'm home now. What do I want to do? I want to back that up. I open the album, I click the 3 dots and download all. And I download it to an external drive. I won't take the time right now. But the other thing I do then is make a book. Since all of my best pictures for this 6-week trip is in one album, all I have to do is open that album, click the little shopping button, and say, make me a photo book. And it's done. Now you can edit it, you can rearrange it, you can add and subtract, but you don't have to. You can just say, make me a book, click next, pay your money, and you get a book like this in the mail. So that is my way of organizing and sharing my travel photos using Google Albums. And if you have any questions, we'll get to them in the Q&A after.
Setting up a new iPad from scratch, I'm Hewie Poplock. On Prime Day, October 2023, I decided that it was time to update my iPad. My original iPad was an iPad Air version 1. That model was released in October 2012. I purchased it about a year and a couple of months later in January 2014. It was a refurb directly from Apple. It worked very well for me all these years, but about a year and a half ago, it was no longer supported by Apple and there were no more updates. The updates stopped at version 12.5.7. The latest version is 17.1. There were 162 apps installed, and it stopped updating at version 12.1. After a lot of pondering, I decided not to buy the latest version of the iPad, which is the 10th generation, I decided on the 9th generation. I decided on the iPad 9th generation. It has a 10.2-inch Retina display, 64 gigabytes of storage, Wi-Fi plus the 4G LTE cellular, 12 megapixel front and 8 megapixel back camera, Touch ID, and all-day battery life, and it's the gray one, and I got it as the 9th generation instead of the 10th. Note that the 10th generation doesn't have a start button or a home button. It has it built into the screen, and it's software generated. There are two other models that I considered. That's the iPad Air and the iPad Pro. Both are more expensive than the iPad that I purchased, and I decided on the iPad itself. I did not need the higher end units. I often get asked why I want the one model that has Wi-Fi and cellular access. I wanted to be able to use my iPad wherever I am. It doesn't matter if there's no Wi-Fi available or if it's a Wi-Fi that's not safe or secure. I still have access with my iPad. My iPad Air was both Wi-Fi and cellular, so I already had the account. And I was already paying for it. This means that I have a cellular number assigned to my iPad that's used strictly as the iPad, not as a phone. However, I can use it as a phone because I have an app installed and an account from magicJack. When I received my iPad, one of the first things that I had to do was to set it up. I signed in with my Apple ID, which I've had since I bought my first Apple device, and I decided not to back up and restore from my older iPad, but to start with a fresh new machine. I had too many apps already installed on the older iPad and wanted to install from scratch to limit the number of apps that I had installed. I wanted to limit what I was going to have on my iPad and not fill it up, as I only had 64 gigabytes of storage on the new iPad. Let's look at the stats or information on each of my iPads. This is my older iPad Air. It does have storage of 128 gigabytes, where my new one only has 64 gigabytes. But there were 162 applications or apps on the older one, and I want to try to limit that and not have as many on the new one. The new iPad still has over 2,000 photos that held them over. I will delete them from the iPad, but not from Google Photos. But I only have 24 applications, and I'm going to try to keep that down. That uses up a lot of disk space or storage space that I don't want to have used up too quickly on this new iPad. I've been using my old iPad Air strictly as a podcast player, and I keep it near my bed. I purchased a gooseneck holder that I clamped to a bookcase that's at the head of my bed. I compared the speeds of both iPads. I checked both as cellular and Wi-Fi in the same place at approximately the same time. So let's take a look at those speeds. The download and upload speeds for both iPads were very similar. The upload varied from about 6 to around 12 each time I tried it. Using my home Wi-Fi, I'm getting speeds over 400 both down and up. One of the first things I had to do when I was setting up the iPad was to set up the fingerprint access to the system. I have fingerprint access on my Samsung phone, and I like it. Note where I place my finger on that Samsung screen. During the setup, I just couldn't make it work. I kept pushing on the screen where the fingerprint was, and it just wasn't working. I ended up going to the T-Mobile store, and they showed me how to do it. And boy, was I embarrassed. It was so easy. Again, I'm reminding you where that fingerprint space is on my Samsung. On the iPad, I figured there was a mark in the center of the screen, so I kept pushing my finger there and nothing happened. It turns out that the fingerprint reader is in the home button at the bottom of the iPad. Once I found that out at T-Mobile, my fingerprint worked, and it's working flawlessly since. In the locked position, you'll see a little lock at the top of the screen. When I put my finger on the home button, you'll see that it's unlocked. I can just then press the home button, and I'm on my home screen. It was done, and it was that simple. The next thing I did was to move some of the screen icons to the second screen so that only the important and highly used icons would be on that first screen. And then I started installing some of the apps that I had on my old iPad. The first one that I wanted to install was my password manager, which is called eWallet from ℸ𝕝𝕼 software. Way back in 2000, I found a program to keep track of all my passwords and account numbers in an encrypted file. I carried a Palm PDA in those days, and as I said, the program was eWallet by ℸ𝕝𝕼 software with a version for both my Palm and later for my PC. I could sync the information as well. Once the Palm PDA and its successor were finally put to rest, I continued to use the program between my desktop, my laptop, and at that time my netbook. The encrypted file containing the data was easily copied, then synced between them. I purchased the original iPhone, and one of the first apps that I added then was the iOS version of eWallet. I could sync it with my PC version via Wi-Fi. It also works on both of my iPads. There's also a version for the Mac. I didn't want to change to some other password manager because I have almost 1,700 cards. So once again, I'm able to carry a program with me to access my passwords anytime. I have since added an iPad Air to the equation and a newer PC and a Chromebook and my Samsung S22 Ultra phone. I'm using eWallet on all of them. Next, I set up my email, and it went extremely smoothly. I initially set up 4 email addresses. I set up my main email using my domain, my Gmail account, my Microsoft 365 email account, and my Apple iCloud email. I set them all up as IMAP accounts, so if I delete an email, it gets deleted from the server and the other devices at the same time. The next installation was Evernote, a program that I live by. I store all of the articles that I see online and that I wish to keep. I currently have over 22,000 notes stored, so I certainly want to have access to this important app. I've also installed Chrome and the Brave browsers. Since I have a MagicJack account, I installed its app and can use my iPad as a large phone. It has its own phone number through the internet, or VoIP. Next to install was the Amazon app, including Miss A. I also installed the Ring app to monitor my Ring cameras and my Ring doorbell. You'll notice in the video in the background an opossum, a feral cat, and even a coyote right outside my back door. I also installed the Chrome browser and a program called SimpleNote, which I use on my desktop and on my phone as well as my iPad, so I can type in a note on any one of those devices and it will show up on the others. I'm looking forward to start using all of the new features and capabilities of my new iPad. With a faster processor, crisp display, and cellular connectivity, this iPad will serve me well for years to come. Let me know if you have any app recommendations as I continue setting up my device and optimizing my workflow.